Good evening. I'm Rachel Gilkey, Director of Programming and Education. Welcome to Irish Arts Centre, and thank you for joining us for the opening reception and artist talk for Brian Maguire's portrait, The Failure of the State, curated by Melissa Boyle and Jonathan Cummins. Brian Maguire is an artist whose work confronts injustices and amplifies the voices of the dispossessed. From his first solo exhibition in the Lincoln Gallery in Dublin in 1970 to today, Maguire situates art as an act of solidarity, the outcome of meeting, listening, and bearing witness to lives erased by systems of power. Just some of the galleries that support him in this work is the Fergus McCaffrey Gallery here in New York and the Curling Gallery in Dublin. Brian will be in conversation tonight with co-curators Melissa Boyle and Jonathan Cummins. Melissa is an independent curator and director of Rua Red South Dublin Art Centre, where she has been since 2017. Her time there has included the Magdalene series, a major body of commissions by artists Jessie Jones, Amanda Coogan, Grace Dias, and Alice Maher and Rachel Fallon, whose work The Map was installed in this theatre in fall 2024. This series addressed the impact of patriarchal and institutional power on women's lives in Ireland. Jonathan Cummins is an artist, curator, and lecturer at Belfast School of Art, Ulster University. Exhibitions of his work have included shows at EVA Limerick, Void Dairy, Dublin City Gallery The Hugh Lane, NCAD Gallery Dublin, and Centre Culturel Irlandais, Paris. His curating projects, often in partnership with Melissa, include exhibitions with artists Anthony Haughey, Katrina Palmer, Santiago Sierra, John Gerard, and Hiraki Sawa. They are also co-curating our fall exhibition. More information on that to come. I also want to extend a welcome to Denise Ozturk, Vice Consul of Ireland, who has just joined us in New York, Beth McKeown, and our friends from Fergus McCaffrey Gallery, who were instrumental in sharing some of Brian's work for this show, and a special welcome to Laura Millen, Director Emerita of Missoula Art Museum, who commissioned the work and supported, across 5 years, Brian and the families of the missing and murdered Indigenous peoples whose portraits are on the first floor. Thank you again for joining us in Bearing Witness. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. You're very welcome to the launch of Portraits, The Failure of the State by Brian Maguire. It's really lovely to see so many people come to the opening tonight. So we're going to talk about Brian's work. So this exhibition is about Brian's engagement with the impact of systemic violence without justice and those lost, their families and communities in Juárez, Montana, and South Sudan. We're going to start with the work on Juárez. So the work on Juárez is located on level 2 and 3, and hopefully you've been able to see some of it. There are 6 paintings in total of Brenda, Barbara, Erica, Esmeralda, Ruby, and Rebecca. So just to give you some context, Juárez, as I'm sure you know, has been plagued by high homicide rates. In 2021 alone, there were over 1,400 people murdered. Many of these were young women and girls. So Brian, maybe you could tell us about the background of this work, which addresses the femicide in Juárez, and how did you come to work there?
I'll be as brief as I can. I was in Idaho, where I usually spent August with artist friends that would give me a studio here. And I read a book. The title of it is gone. It was by 2 Mexican journalists, 2 women. And it was about these killings. The people being killed were factory workers, young, in Juárez. The Clinton North American agreement had created a zone for factories south of the border, very close to the border. And they make the looms in all our cars, they make the fridges, etc. A huge number of young young women came to work here because it suited the work. And they're paid $50 a week, whereas the union workers in America who used to do this work, they weren't working at it anymore, whatever they were doing. And all of a sudden, the girls started to turn up in the periphery, naked and dead, around the city. There weren't enough detectives in Juárez to write to write all their names on a file, much less investigate it. The government used to send army trucks with soldiers, not detectives. There was no investigation. So this was a question of the very poor being preyed on. We don't know who by. There were very few effective convictions that were believed. And it kept going. It happens in Alaska all the way down to Chile. But in Juárez, it seemed to be, anyway. I decided that I would I knew I could paint pictures of dead people. I'd done it before. And I decided to see if I could do something about publicizing this. And through the artists, or through a museum in Texas, I was put in touch with an artist down in a Mexican artist who worked there. The Station Museum was the name of the museum. He had done a show about a group show about this subject, and so through her, I met an NGO, the representatives of an NGO, Maricela Ortiz, and she offered me a contract. She said, if you do art classes for the orphans, I will introduce you to the families. And that's what we did. Alison Spelsey, who's in New York at the moment, but she's working in another place. She helped me with the materials for the workshops. And it was very lucky to begin that way, because the workshops were full of pleasure, full of laughter. There were kids all ages, from 0 to 17. And we did them in a local hotel. The following day went to start meeting families. And it was tragic. I remember the mum in the first family, it looked like she hadn't got out of the city in 5 years, when her daughter was killed. Anyway, that's how it began.
Brian, maybe be an opportunity to talk about a couple of the young women. We have Brenda up there on the screen just for the last couple of minutes, and I remember this work very well from an exhibition in Void. It's an image that stayed with us both over the years.
It's the only one that's black and white.
Yeah.
I remember visiting her mum, and they had moved. Every time I visited them, they were in a different house. They were moving out of fear, because her mum, I must have had her when she was 16. She was young and had a fierce amount of energy, and if you can understand, screaming the city down. That's what she did. She screamed to find out. People tell her. She knew her daughter was here in this computer class, and she didn't know what had happened to her. People took objection to her and threatened her and stuff. That girl was pregnant. she was 16. The fella was 17 and he wasn't much use. But the family came around her, and I always remember the mum saying, we enjoyed the changes in her. You know. Anyway.
She worked in one of the factories, I think, did she? She didn't know.
No, she didn't. She was unemployed at the time. What happened was Kevin was born, and a month after breastfeeding Kevin, she decided that it's a kind of a circular thing. She needed to get a job to get baby food for her child. She couldn't buy it without having a job, and she needed the baby food because she had a job. So, you know, that's what she wanted. She had been sacked. She was working in a factory, but they sacked her when they saw her showing, and it was illegal. Still happened. The thing about her was she went down. She had had a job previously in the exact centre of Juárez, about 100 yards from the church, which is the main centre point of the town. And she went down and asked them if they'd hire her again. She was never seen again. And as I say, the family were questioning everybody, her mum. And the answer she got was, get out of here or we shoot you. Anyway.
Brian, could we take
I was so angry over this because it was so obvious that it wouldn't have happened if the law had been applied. Paternity leave, wages, your job back. That was the law. But in these NAFTA agreement factories, there was no law.
They weren't benefiting from NAFTA, that's for sure, their families. Right, could we take a look at another one of the paintings from this series with maybe Barbara or
Erica is the thing is, I got to know Erica's mother very well. Erica's mother, we made a film, our man made a film, a friend of mine. He followed me, you know, throughout the process and made a film, and it was shown in Dublin at the film festival called Blood Rising. It contains one American event, and that's a Terry Allen song at the very end. He gave it to us for it. The mother arrived in Dublin. She came over and she represented the women in Dublin. Our president came to that screening and, you know, welcomed her. What can I say? Erica was found not far from her home at night. Her clothes were disturbed and her bra was around her neck. The wonderful policeman saw it was an obvious overdose of drugs, thereby closing the case as it's opened. There was no justice for Erica.
So I think we can hear you speak all these years later about these paintings.
I said one thing about Erica.
Yeah.
She had 2 children, and I watched those children grow up in the period of going there, and they're fine. They're in the medical nursing, trained in nursing.
Yeah. With so many of the people you paint, they appear to be subject to such abject use of power, be that a complete failure of it in terms of the state, be it drug wars, be it cartels or institutions. Even land and becomes kind of territorialized, and
Which?
even land. I'm thinking of
Yeah.
your images from the Arizona desert.
Yeah.
Could you maybe say something about the importance of representing and knowing
Well,
the people that you express so well when you speak about, say, Eric all these years later?
I made the pictures. I made 2 pictures of each person, and the same is true of the works upstairs. There was a smaller version made, and that is given to the family, and that was the case here. The women told me early on that they liked the way I was painting them, that the pictures looked like the way they remembered them. But of course they would be, because it was the women who gave me the pictures. But anyhow, there was a show. Eventually we exhibited. I made 2 exhibitions at the same time of the work I do. I had enough in each project to cut the projects down the middle and send half of the work to Juárez and the other half to El Paso. But it meant that the women were shown in the center of Juárez. They have a very nice museum there. And they came, we had a special opening for those women. And one of them spoke about it and said that she spoke in a very rhetorical fashion. She said she had never been in the center of Juárez before, that she lived in the periphery. Her daughter was born in the periphery. Her daughter was murdered in the periphery. They had never been in the center until today. But she was very glad that at this time the memory of her daughter was being acknowledged in the center of Juárez. And that kind of summed it up. As I say, it's her words.
Brian, could we turn to maybe talk a little bit about the work from Montana?
Montana, yeah.
Which is the work that you see in the foyer on the first floor, where the focus is on the missing and murdered Indigenous people in Montana. This was a 5-year project initiated with Missoula Art Museum.
Well, with respect, it took 5 years, but that's because I was sick for 1.5.
There's a very powerful essay by Brian in the catalogue that went with the exhibition, and I just think the best way to contextualize this work is with the first paragraph, and we'd like to read that. It'll just take a moment. When we are confronted with the individual stories and even the statistics, the enormity of the missing and murdered Indigenous people crisis is overwhelming. Tribal people have disproportionately high rates of assault, rape, abduction and murder. Indigenous women are 4 times as likely to go missing, murdered at a rate 10 times higher than the national average, and homicide is one of the leading causes of death for young Indigenous women. Sexual assault also occurs at a much higher rate, and with more serious consequences than for any other racial or ethnic group in the United States. Specifically in Montana, the rate of homicide is grossly disproportionate to the composition of tribal people, who represent approximately 7% of the overall population, while they represent 26% of homicides. Maybe you could just say, in your experience, why there is such a failure of justice in not just Montana, but of course across North America.
You got to be kind of a bit careful here not to lose the run of oneself. I was there for a time. It began with a 5-month residency, and I really experienced the difficulty of reaching into the native community. eventually I figured out what was wrong. I was sending messages from the wrong people. All I had to do was send a message from the right people, and I got an answer back. I'm just saying I don't know. I was only a visitor. I know the statistics, and I mean, none of this matters when you're sitting in a chair opposite the family that have lost someone. The whole thing, this is where it's at. It's at the single pain of that family. And I'm able to pick that up. Any one of us is. If you have any degree of empathy, you can make that journey. It's not a big deal. By the time I was finishing, and when you stand upstairs and stand a little further back, I think that there's one old bloke and there's one middle-aged bloke, maybe more, but most of them are young. You know, one of the women is 42, but most are in their 20s, you know. I think you can see that from just standing in front of the thing.
Absolutely. And none more so than...
Yeah, Brian, we've got an image of Arden, Arden Pepion, a young girl aged 3, who was murdered in 2021.
Well, she disappeared, to be practical, but she was... the granny talked to me about her. She was a really good young kid. Like, she sat at the sofa making sure she could put her shoes on until she could put her shoes on. She kept at it. That was what... The granny goes out with 2 of her mates to look for clues. I don't know how much one can say or not say. This is a very safe place. But there was... Well, my son works in this area in London. He's in charge of a unit of child protection. And he said, you know, mostly when a little kid like that goes missing, you'll find it's somebody connected to the family. And I said, oh, well, no, it can't be in this case. And then I remembered. An aunt was married to a man who was best mates of a guy who had done a sentence for this kind of stuff, you know. But then there's only about... These are Blackfeet, and there's not that many actually living on the place. This was a very sober and a very good family. They I don't know who it was, I can't remember now exactly, but one of the uncles was in charge of the fire brigade, which is a very responsible job in the community. But out of that, it's very easy for a tribal policeman to have a family relationship with a suspect. If there's only 1,000 and you've picked your cops from them and your suspects come from them, you know, it's too small a number to get the distance needed. Law enforcement mostly is a joke. It's like the Juárez. The fella, one of the lads, the first picture in the line, was shot in the back of the head and had his clothes, coats and things thrown over him in the bed. And they call that suicide.
Yeah. Brian, can we go on to the next image? I find this one really, really difficult because it's a photo from the book on the exhibition OUTRAGE, which was at Missoula Art Museum. And the image shows Jennifer Whitebear with portraits of her uncle Bugsy. He was murdered in 2004. Her grandson, Farron, who was murdered in 2023. and her daughter Bonnie, who was also murdered in 2017. I know there was also something else that happened that day that you went to take this photograph.
Yeah, what we were doing, it was this time last year, we were travelling throughout Montana, giving the works back to the families. These works are not in the show. These were given to Jennifer. And Jennifer was like a shop steward for the families. She had a notebook that had everyone's phone number in. In fact, I used her a lot on that trip to get to meet who I needed to meet. She was working in a homestead hotel. I think that was the name of it. And, there were mostly native people working in the hotel. And there was a really good atmosphere between the owners and the people who worked there. One of the jobs we had that day was to get the text right for her 3 kids, the 3 people that were dead. Her daughter had been killed, and I don't remember exactly how she was killed. But the family wrote on Facebook, "We know who's did it." And that later that night, petrol bomb was put through the window of their house. House went up in flames. The young fella got everybody out. He was either 7 or 11. He was young. But he went back for his kittens. Didn't get out. The smoke got to him. The other man at the end, he was an ex-Marine, and he liked to hunt. And they don't know what happened to him. They know he was dead, but they couldn't understand how his clothes were folded and he was dead. Anyway, we asked if she would listen to the texts when we had the meeting. She said no. She said she's not able to do it because events of yesterday has caused it to become too difficult for her. The events of yesterday were as follows, and I find it hard to relate this, but anyhow, her colleague was going home. This is when all the snow was on particularly East Montana. It was minus 37, it's ridiculous cold. But anyhow, they were driving home with their son and her husband. And she found her daughter in the snow at the back of the house, naked, dead. And that was the reason the granny, Jennifer, couldn't speak. And that happened when we were on the way back at the very end of this project, bringing the pictures back. It was the last, before the exhibition, but the last move. So it meant it was going on. Now, I was equally upset at the time, and we just didn't know how to cope. We got into our car and went to the hotel we were staying in or whatever. And it was the following day. I said, I was talking to Brandon a couple of days later. I said, Brandon, will you check the newspapers for today so that we can get the girl's name? Because I didn't have anything. I was just gobsmacked by the whole thing. And it wasn't in the papers. And that really kind of explained it. It wasn't even worth a mention in the paper. She was 18 years of age. So it's there's immunity. Is that the right word? where you're not liable. That's what goes on in Juárez, and that's what goes on in Montana. People can go and do this, and nothing happens to them. And I think that makes it more possible. And I'm grateful for you to be an audience here today. And I'm grateful to the Centre for giving me an opportunity to talk about this. It doesn't happen much in Ireland, even though it does happen. I think we have 6 women who we have never found out either what happened to them or who did it to them. But every few years, every 10 years, 100 detectives gather on a cold case operation, and they treat it like it happened yesterday. And I've seen a number of times, in Carlow and there. That's not the case here.
No.
I'm mindful of time as well, and that we want to leave some time for Q&A, for questions. And I was wondering, should we jump ahead to Bentiu?
Sure.
But I think the texts are so important. That's such an important part of the work. And Brian, maybe you could say something about this link between the narrative, the story, and the painting, which...
Well, I can't read, that's out of focus for me, but it's okay. This is the text that I spoke about, that we were going about to finalise. The text is written, it's kind of partly by Brandon and myself, partly by the Sovereign Bodies, which is an NGO that was in existence. It's not there now. But the text goes through, it's given to the family to change or to give the final edit to. And the text is supposed to give the context of what happened. The portrait, as I said, like about the Juárez ones, were based on photos. I was shown, I photographed them, and long years of practice taught me never to take anything. I'll lose it. As sure as God. So I take photographs.
Okay.
Brian, in Montana, there has been activism around the missing and murdered people. Can you explain a wee bit just about, what does art and painting offer alongside documentary, podcasts as another way of highlighting, and why painting? Why not a photograph?
Well, the answer to that almost leaves Montana behind, and you begin to look at the question, painting, photograph. The thing about painting is that it's made by hand, and that I think is the most significant thing about it, that it's handmade. It's unique. We all know it's important because we grew up with the pictures of the presidents, as they were all paintings back then.
So it was something that was seen for the elite, but you've turned that around.
It was seen for the elite. But it was a wonderful thing happened in Bentiu, where I don't know what the context was, but some people must have been pointing at me and saying, "Look at him. He's the fellow who makes photographs by hand." That's what the drawings were, So I thought that was a very significant description you know. I think, I don't know, but I think that there can be something about painting which, you know, we manipulate the colours, we choose the colours, and in that sense, emotion. You know how you talk about blues music and stuff. We have a language of colour that describe music, you know, which is all it's to do with the emotions. So I just the main reason why they're painting is because I know how to make a painting. I don't know how to make a photograph, and that is an accident of birth, because I was born in '51. And I'm afraid I misled the earlier CV. It was 79. I had my first show, not 70. So I'm sorry. But that's what I do.
Yeah.
But I use photography in it. I gather the research through photography.
We have a picture of Bentiu camp, South Sudan up there.
So this is from 2018. I'm going to use a quote from Gemma Tipton. So whenever Gemma was writing about this work in the Irish Times, she quotes you and she says, I have had, or this is in your words, I have had a policy of going to places where there's no queue. Prisons, Damascus, and so on. Can you tell us a bit about this work, about Bentiu? How did you come to be there? And where did the work, or who did the work involve?
Well, there was the 50th anniversary of Trócaire, and I know Bill Clinton was there to celebrate it, the president. I'm not sure who else was there, but the leadership of Trócaire came to me, or Concern International, and they asked me to give them the Aleppo paintings for an exhibition. But I'd already shown the Aleppo paintings a couple of miles from where the gallery they wanted me to use. So I said, well, what if I went and looked at one of your projects and made a show about that? And they kind of got on board. I paid my own way. I went out there. They looked after me. They sent 2 women to mind me and make sure I remained whatever they needed me to remain. And they were terrific women. And this picture was made by, I climbed up the watchtower, the water tower, and photographed it from the water tower. There were 100,000 people here. And they were there because they were in the fear of their lives. The revolutionary movement that had fought for the freedom of South Sudan and won fell apart, started to fight each other. It happened in Ireland too, and it could be said to have happened here as well. But anyway.
So how long did you spend?
It wasn't that long. It was around 10 days or so. And I drew people in the camp, and I had a most wonderful, really wonderful day. I brought powder paints and stuff, and we asked for 20 kids that we could do a workshop with. And of course, 100 turned up. So we divide them from the under 4s and the over 4s, as we split them up that way. And I worked with the elderly ones, the over 4s, and they painted the most wonderful paintings. And very little engagement. What our job was to make sure that they had the colours, that if they used the yellow, we made sure they got more yellow, and we mixed the paint for them, and we were their servants.
It's a beautiful image.
There you are.
That's doing the drawing. I have to tell you, it was 52 degrees Fahrenheit, or Celsius. Yeah, it was very hot.
And this connects in with a current project for Rua Red, where you're working with.
A lot of my work comes from being asked to do something, and you think about it and you come to a conclusion. You're not really sure. These two approached me, wanted me to do this show, but also another one for Dublin.
Keep you on your toes.
Now, this one was work that existed already, so it wasn't a big draw on me time. But the other one, there was an attack on the city. There was a big conference centre taken over by government to make a structure, a kind of a administrative structure, to deal with asylum seekers coming to Ireland. And the UN came and visited it, or the Europeans, somebody came and visited it officially and said it was the best thing they'd ever seen. And it is good. And every service that's in the country and every civil service, you know, people that have to, you know, a migrant turns up, is he well, is he okay, is his head straight, all that stuff needs to be figured out. And so the people there who are migrants, they're there for about 3 weeks plus. And it was into that circumstances that these two asked me to go. And I started to draw them on Fabriano paper with charcoal.
You're up there.
Couldn't be simpler. Yeah, that's a good one there. Just gives you a sense of it. And we paid, everybody that sat for me got over $100 in a card. We're not allowed work, so you can't pay them. But you can give them a present of a card, a gift card, which they can buy stuff with. And they were very pleased to get that. And worked there, I don't know, many months.
Since October, Brian has been working within the IPAS Centre, and you've been going there 3 days a week?
3 days, the afternoons. That's as much as I can do. I turned 75 recently. I'm very proud of this achievement. Anyway, we do 2 drawings, and they, because I had loads of people there, we made a workshop so that they could paint and draw where they came from, what stuff that's on their mind. And Melissa came up with Michael, who manages that part of the room, because if I was drawing, there's nothing else. You just concentrate on what you're doing. Interruptions don't help it, you know. So we're nearly finished. There are about 40 drawings. The title for it, after a lot of thinking, is These Beautiful Men. Now, half of them will be gay, and they've come there because in the struggles for power of the Islamicists in Nigeria, these men are under sentence of death. I mean, a number from Pakistan, one man from Pakistan who's been in touch, Monsoon, he also, his mother got him out through an uncle. The father would have killed him. I mean, this is what's going on. And because Ireland had a very public referendum about rights for gay people, and it was successful, mostly thanks to the mothers of Ireland who had children like this, I said, yes, they need the law to be for them. And they come to Ireland now, which is kind of extraordinary, really.
Mm. And the exhibition opens in Rua Red on the 6th of March.
Yeah.
And will run in parallel with the exhibition here, both focusing on portraits. You have an exhibition on an Florida as well.
Yeah,
so there'll be a point, there'll be a day when you have 3 exhibitions on at the same time.
It's only one day because Florida is on for 6 months and it's closing on the 7th.
But it'll be a good time to open up to questions. Yeah. Okay. Does anyone have a question?
I think we have a
Yes.
mic as well.
So the families provide you with the photos.
Yeah.
Have any bodies been found of these people that you painted after the fact? You know, they tell you that they're missing or dead or whatever. But have any of their bodies been found
Not that.
after the fact?
Yes, Rosie. Rosie's body was found after I painted her. Rosie, yeah, that's her brother was Camonile. Rosie's at the second last picture on the red, and her brother's probably the second one or the first. But yes, not many. Not many. I wouldn't necessarily know either. You know, it's. Yes,
Here,
if two.
I just had a quick observation. Now that the Epstein files have been continually being dumped, the heroic activity of, close to 1,000 women to really push to have their abusers made public, and the shenanigans with that, it just has to do with, I'm contrasting that with what you said about the NAFTA and how the lies are just thrown away, that there's this throwaway, and I know Montana, I mean, they have now thinking about taking away post office boxes for mail-in voting because the reservations only have postdoc boxes. They don't have addresses. So, I mean, this is ongoing currents of power underneath. So anyway, if you wanted, I just said that in sympathy, but I don't.
The same. I just say to you that Shelley, who is now Shelley Finan, was the chief of the. One name that's used, they don't like it, Flathead, but it's below Blackfoot. Shelley was the chief and a very good one, and she's now a member of the Montana Senate. She's been re-elected twice to the Senate. She lost her position as chief because she was almost like. It has a smell of something from elsewhere. She had no opposition. So there was no, and then there was an internet write-in campaign which lied about her hugely, and she lost her chiefdom. You know, it looks like something I've heard about before, that type of operation, you know. Which, as I say, it turned out she's a member of the Senate, twice elected now.
So thank you for tonight. My question is sort of more current with what's going on in Ireland right now with immigration and some backlash against immigration. We were fortunate to be there. Well, unfortunate, I guess. My son lives there now, and we were there over the weekend when there were some severe riots. And this last trip we went over, we saw a lot of nationalist flags. How is your art in this movement with the immigration? How is it impacting not just the immigrants, but the nationalists in Ireland to make some societal changes?
I don't know, because we haven't put it out there. Well, we're going to put it out very soon. And, I've made a very clear statement that these are human beings. They're individual, they're unique, And for me, they're beautiful. You can make up your own mind with what information you have. I'm trying to pose something, to just pose a different view, and we see how it goes. The use of the national flag, good Jesus, you know, it's weird because the loyalists have trained them from the north to use the flags in this manner. You know, it's coming from the loyalists who I know. I got to know them well in the 90s. But I think there's a connection there. You know, which is almost, you wouldn't have believed it was possible beforehand. You know, 10 years ago, that loyalism would influence nationalism in the South. To use the tricolour the way they were using the Union Jack, in the same manner, for the same reason, to intimidate.
Yeah. So,
appropriated and territorialised.
Marking out territory, for sure.
That is happening.
I'm looking forward to the row, to tell you the truth.
And I think just on behalf of, you know, Rua Red, we encourage discussion. We see it as a place of conversation. And, you know, we're well aware that it may encourage protests outside of the Arts Centre. But in a way, that discussion needs to happen.
And that's part of the response, this work and commissioning this work. The window for it was really, you know, it was a very short window, but it was important to do it. And you see Brian sketching there in charcoal. This is a rapid response. It's not painting. It's a precarious environment where people move on quickly, and this is a period of really just a few weeks to make work, but of an exhibition.
More often than not, the people I draw on Monday, Wednesday and Friday are being moved the following day. We get them just before they go, more often than not. But we haven't refused anyone yet.
No.
And
so the subject matter that you deal with and the people, these whole projects, they're so heavy emotionally. How did you process that, and how do you think doing these things have changed you?
I don't know the answer, to be honest with you. I don't know how it's changed me. Or I do believe in. I mean, when I grew up, the thing to do was find a rifle, not a fucking paintbrush. You know, and perhaps I might have gone a little bit in that direction, but I realised that the paintbrush for me is a superior weapon to any rifle. You know, the anger is what drives the work along. Then there is a relationship that has grown, and that gives me the duty to continue. This is telling other people's stories. It's not telling my own. It's not painting about painting. I make formal history paintings. I make work about, you know, the Amazon and stuff. But this particular work is, what's the phrase? Socially engaged.
Socially engaged.
It's engaged with a society. It's a job, like it can be described as a job, isn't there? There's a job description for socially engaged artists. So I'm sure, not that I've ever read it, but
yeah, I think if that came through in your responses, but if we had a bit more time, we might explore that further. But that.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
Up there, up the top, there's 2 or 3. And thank you for your questions. It kind of makes the thing kind of less lopsided or whatever.
Thank you for your exhibition. It's been wonderful. I was just wondering, I know you mentioned the factor of the failed state as being shared. Is there any other factors that you felt between Montana and Mexico, for example, besides that, or do you want to expound on that a little bit about the
poverty?
The poverty.
You know, that's common. You know, to tell you an interesting story. At I made the first painting, which was of Aisling. Met her sister at an event where they developed an app. So if someone in your group or your family goes missing, you press the button on the app, and it goes to all the law enforcement agencies in the state. and so I met her at that launch. I'd made the painting that's in the exhibition, and then I made a small version of it, and I went to deliver the small version to her cousins. And the handover was in a woodwork class, kind of woodwork shop in the college. In Montana, the treaties allowed for, or mandated, that each tribal unit would have a college, doing 2 years, you know, post whatever it is, high school, pre, and 2 years. And they would go on then to university for the third and fourth. Anyway, I hands over the picture, and at this stage I decided I'd ask the big question for me. And I said to your man, the teacher that was there, I said, what do you think of a white man doing this work? And he looked at me and said, you're not a white man. You're an Irishman. So, and then he said something very unusual. I'd never heard this thing being mentioned, and I've travelled in every continent of the world. This is the first time I heard about it. The plantation of Ulster. Now, the plantation of Ulster was back in 1840. We did very badly in it, we lost. And I come from the family that were in Fermanagh. It's a big county, wouldn't be as big as Montana, but it's a sizable county. And it was taken over, the valleys were taken over, and the Maguires were sent, either the rich ones went to the kings of Spain and France, and the poor ones went up the mountain. And there are photographs from around that time where they dug out at the side of the hill and made a house by digging a hole into the side of the mountain. Anyway, my father was born on that mountain. And so I kind of knew about the plantation of Ulster. we knew about it. Well, it wasn't a big deal with us, but we knew about it. What your man told me I didn't know. He said it was the same soldiers that did the plantation of Ulster that did the Blackfeet. And there was a link, you know, between us. So I don't know how much that answers your question, sir, but to me it was a fantastic moment. I felt I belonged there. I had the right to do this work. And besides, there was nobody in front of me doing it, and there was nobody behind me doing it. So if I didn't do it, it wouldn't happen. All right. There were a few more. There's people who I come to you.
Hi, I have 2 questions and they're kind of interlinked, but the first one is I'm interested in if there's a difference in the process of painting someone who you've actually met and someone who you haven't, and if like the stories of the people around them who are like telling you about this person have like influenced your, I don't know, how you see them. And also I'm interested in the fact that when you are painting someone who's gone missing or someone who's been murdered, you talk a lot about painting kind of innocence, and it's like innocence. And I wonder if there's anyone you've painted that as you kind of start this, getting to know them, you like develop more of a like complex view on who they are.
Yeah, at the beginning of Juárez project, I remember all those thoughts, and included the perpetrator, the person who killed her. I would think about them. I remember thinking, I'm worried I'm going to get the fucking names mixed up, but you go up one of the elevators, doors open, and there's a big white painting. That's no, it's the other one. Yes, Rebecca, who's painting her. But it's true. Even if you had real life people in front of you, you still choose the colours. The way I work is that space is created through colour, and it's very instinctive. It's you know, the one that was black and white was the most obvious one where I was influenced by what happened to her. I was full of fury. I couldn't see any way of doing this other than black and white. The mother asked me, I did the small one for her, and it was kind of like a copy of the bigger one. And she came back and said, even though she had it pinned up at her vanity mirror, you know, where you do yourself up in the morning. So she didn't hide it away, but she said she wanted a picture which was more like her daughter as she knew her. The picture I had was the girl was going out for the night with her mate, and they were dolled up. And I got a school photo, and I made that picture for her, and she was delighted. You know, so it was about satisfying the customer in this case, the families. I was working for them. I had to satisfy them. So part of my autonomy as an artist is handed over in that process.
I think I might have what I think is a good follow-up question, maybe to yours. You sat in my living room once and you told me that painting was a gesture of love.
Yeah.
And I think you were talking about the actual drawing of the line. Maybe you can finish the sentence because I can't bloody remember it. So.
Yeah, it's okay. I know what you mean. If you're in bed with your partner and the sun has come up and you have a look at them and your eye follows right down there, over there, you know, your eye traces your partner, assuming things are good. But you know what I mean. We've all done this. And drawing follows that process, that logic, looking. I'm afraid to look at anyone now. Looking at the person. I used to tell school kids this, that if you want to learn how to draw someone, you know, you go into a cafe and someone will be attractive in the cafe. Someone will stand out more than everyone else. But that form of looking is the looking you have to do if you're going to draw. You have to look with love, or like I pretend even. So painting is the same. It's trying to find the person. Okay, are we finished?
I don't know.
I know there was
kind of
somebody
looking
here.
over there. Yeah, it'd be great to get a couple more questions, Rachel, if we can. Yeah, good.
Thank you. Oh,
Where are you?
I'm up here. Thanks.
Oh, good.
Thank you for a wonderful talk and on a very difficult subject. But I'm looking at the work behind. I was going to say painting. I'm looking at the photograph behind you, and I'm looking at the moment where you, the painter, are looking for. I know you're looking at the subject, but what is a painter? A poet would be looking for a word. What is the artist looking for with the charcoal in his hand before he turns back to the painting?
You're looking for a line. You're looking for a tone. Because you build it with lines and tones. That's how you build the image. Yeah. You're just looking to. It's kind of very simple.
I was just going to ask, because you're often embedded in different communities.
Oh yeah.
That the act of making a portrait is an incredibly intimate thing between two people. Are you often turning into the therapist, or are you a counsellor in this situation?
What? Counsellor?
Are you,
no, Jesus.
Yeah. Are you a therapist? No.
I worked for years in prison. I made portraits in prison. I was delighted because the very act of making a portrait in prison is 2 fingers to the idea of the prison. You know, where a person doesn't have a name, much less a personality. They only have a number. So I wouldn't, maybe the therapy is in the being drawn. I mean, I was interested in, the men were so pleased in City West to be drawn. It wasn't just a few bob, or they wanted my picture made.
Well, I think you have the empathy.
Yeah.
That's part of your toolkit, isn't it?
Yeah, well, there's only one person for you in the whole world when you're doing it. It's the person opposite you. And we used to talk, I used to ask them to tell me about how they got here. And, you know, some of the stories are horrific, but anyway.
It's the act of listening, I think, as well, Brian.
Yeah.
I wanted to know if you've ever heard of any perpetrators being, any perpetrators being caught after it came out?
No, I don't think so. I mean, we have fairly large, we have about 50 people, 50 cases here, so I can't be absolutely certain, but I don't think so. Immunity is the name of this game. You don't get caught. If you're not caught immediately. The police say that the first 24 hours or 48 hours is critical. Anyway. What are we doing? This lady has her hand up for weeks.
I have a question about... Oh, here, sorry, wait, it's just so everybody can hear you.
Comparison between you painting in City West, where the refugees are in an enclosed space, and this is, an experience for them where they're accepted and it's something that's a bright moment for them. But how do you compare that with going to a reservation in Montana where they're very insular? They may not want an outsider there, and despite the fact that you were an Irish person, how did you gain access and their trust?
Well, remember I said at the beginning about I was there for 5 months. I had a Fulbright. So I was able to pay my way for 5 months and stay in good accommodation and that. And I'd meet somebody who was a cousin of the family that I wanted to contact, because there was a billboard up, Jermaine Charlo. Her billboard was up on the highway coming in. So everybody knew about the case, and I wanted to contact them. And I must have gone through 17 cousins. I never got a single answer in the 4 months. And I understood in the end. When I went through Shelley, who was the chief, I got an answer. We go to breakfast. And once I met them, I had a catalogue of the Mexican work. I just put it on the table. There was a picture of the girl, and beside her was the text. I said, that's what I'm talking about doing, if you want to. And I never had a refusal. But it was the cataloguing of the Mexican work that showed what I was about. But getting to the table, I needed to have a person who was respected ask them to come to the meeting. And that's no different here. Any community is the same. But it took a long time to learn that. I'm a bit stupid. I got no refusals, really. You know, I must have got some, but I can't remember them. Yeah.
How did you get into the painting?
How do I what?
Got into the painting.
How did I what?
How did you get into this game? Painting.
Painting.
I don't know.
You spoke about Bray.
Yeah, I was born and reared in Bray, and you know, I got a prize as a school student. I worked very hard to be the most punished kid in the school. I got 5 on each hand at one stage. That was the best. But then I got a fucking letter, and I assumed the letter was telling my parents what a troublemaker I was, etc., etc. And I avoided him for 3 months, but he caught me eventually. The letter was not a condemnation, a commendation, commending me for a picture I painted. And that was the only thing I got that was positive in school. So I think maybe I used to paint soldiers and things when I was in, 11, 8. I used to paint things. And by the time I had gone to work early. I'd been in factories and building sites, and I'd been in England, and I kind of knew there was nothing in those jobs. And then my father was very clear, we had to either go to work or go to school. And so I went to a tech in Dunleary, and the guy teaching there, I don't know why he took me, but he did. I had some pictures I showed him. He asked me, did I have any drawings? I said, what's drawings? But he still took me. And he taught a course which was written out of the Weimar Republic, what was Bauhaus University, by Clay and others who had made almost a scientific course in understanding visual form. It was brilliant. We were there 3.5 days a week. We all got into colleges wherever we wanted. Of course, then we were confronted with the academicians. You have a few of them here, I think, in art schools. And they thought that genius, the fellow's a genius. And anyway, they had a bit of trouble with us again. We were suspended most of the time I was there. But it wasn't all doom and gloom, because by the time I got to 50, they made me the head of fine art in that school, which I was there for 8 or 9 years, and I worked then. I used to teach in prison up till that. So that's the biggest answer you'll get.
Rachel, I'm not sure when there's a kind of a cut-off. I forgot to ask you that.
Well, why don't we, is there one more question in the audience? I think we've managed, yes, okay, we'll have your final question.
I work in a field that I see a lot of atrocities, and as the day goes on, a lot of times I have to tamper down my empathy for self-preservation. How do you do a project for months and months and keep up the compassion?
Well, it's your, remember, there's no queue here. There's no one else. In Juárez or in West Montana, there's nobody else doing this. So it's your responsibility to carry it through. It's a duty. You know, that's how I read it anyway. I don't, you never know if the world needs what you do. The world doesn't need pictures. You know, it doesn't need another painting, I think, or another painter. But if this is what I do it. And I usually have a duty to the people I'm working with, because remember, it begins with a conversation with a family and a desire to make a memorial. I found out something early with people, that there was a picture of a boy, a man, and he's with his 2 sons, 2 little babies or whatever. And I said, could I paint the babies? They said, why would you do that? They're alive. I learned something that day about what the photo means. Anyway, there you go.